my name is Emer Neville. I'm the President of the Irish Second Level Students' Union, and today I'm joined by Orlaith, an Assistant Chief Inspector with the Department of Education, and we're working with SpunOut.ie, the Department of Education and the State Examinations Commission to answer all your questions about accredited grades. Thank you so much for joining, Orlaith.
It's great actually to be here today, Emer, and just to have a chance and an opportunity to speak to everybody and to work through some of the questions that you have. I know that you have questions that you'd like to ask, and hopefully we'll be able to work jointly in terms of answering those.
Can we talk about standardisation? Why is it needed and how does it work?
Okay, Emer, I think before we start talking about standardisation and why it's needed and how it works, it would be useful actually to just reflect on what an accredited grade is. So what happened this year is that the teachers of each subject and a class group in a school would have looked at the performance of those students over the last 2 years. They'd have thought about how each student would have performed in the examinations, and based on that they would have arrived at an estimated mark for the student. So for example, in the case of geography, the teacher would have considered how they'd performed in 5th year and 6th year. They'd have thought about what the adjusted arrangements in the geography written examination paper would have been, and had a thought about how they might perform in that. And they would also have considered, as in the case of geography, the second component, the coursework. And taking all those things together, they would have arrived at an estimated percentage mark for each student that they had in their class. Now, following that, they worked with the other teachers of geography in the school. So they would have had what we call a subject alignment meeting. And what that would have allowed the teachers to do is to discuss the standards as they applied them, had a conversation around it to make sure that everybody was working in the same way. And then following that meeting, actually, the school principal would have taken a look, an oversight role we call it, in terms of the marks for each of the students in each of their subjects in the school. And then at the end of that, the school would have submitted the marks for standardisation. So, Emer, that brings us now to the question of really what standardisation is and what it involves.
Okay.
Essentially, what standardisation does is take those school marks that we've discussed and apply a statistical process to them. Now, why we need to do that is very simple. The research indicates to us that while teachers arrive at estimated marks or can make a judgment, they often do so within the context of their own school. So it's really important, so that students are treated fairly, that we look at what a national standard might be. And so in order to do that, we apply a standardisation process across all of the schools and the marks that would have been received. And the reason very simply for that is so that we mitigate any underestimation or overestimation that might have happened in schools or which could have happened in schools, in order, as I said, to be fair to the students of 2021.
So on results day, what will students actually see on the portal?
Emer, what you'll see is the better of the two results. Your examination result or your accredited grade if you've opted to do both.
Very good.
So sometime shortly after that, actually, you'll be able to access the portal again, and you'll be able to see all of the results, your examination result and your accredited grade.
How many students will have grades changed through standardisation?
Well, Emer, when you look at the result, actually, particularly in relation to the accredited grade, you'll see actually the estimated mark that was put in for the school. You'll see what the result of standardisation was on that mark. There may be a change in the mark, but there may not be a result in a change in the grade. And it's really important actually to stress that while the mark might result in a change as a result of the standardisation process, it doesn't mean necessarily that there's a change in the grade. So for example, in 2020, in 4 out of 5 cases, the grade remained the same as that which was submitted by the school. Where there were changes, actually, it was either as a result of overestimation or underestimation on the part of the school in terms of the marks that were submitted. Now, at this point, it's impossible to say what changes there will be until actually the estimated marks that have come in from the schools are actually put through the standardisation process for 2021.
What information or data does standardisation use to decide on accredited grades?
Data on the junior cycle results for the Leaving Certificate class of 2021. Recent national data on the Leaving Certificate in previous years. And the national distribution of results may form part of the process for 2021.
Okay.
The standardisation process will not use historical school-by-school data on past performance in the Leaving Certificate examinations. The performance of students in the 2021 Leaving Certificate examinations will not be used to calculate their accredited grade.
People talk about an algorithm. Does this include junior cycle results?
Just to revisit actually, Emer, what we said just there a minute ago. What we said may be used in the process are the junior cycle results of the Leaving Certificate class of 2021. Recent national performance in recent examinations in previous years, and also the national distribution of Leaving Certificate results. The process of standardisation in 2020 and again in 2021 will in many cases use junior cycle data in relation to the process itself. How it will be used actually, Emer, is at group level. So you take the aggregate group junior cycle results in order to give the relative strength of the group itself. Now what that means is that individual results are actually not used in the process. Individual junior cycle results are not used in that process. Nor will actually the fact that somebody is exempt from Irish affect the aggregate for the class group.
Does this take into account that some schools usually get very high marks in the Leaving Certificate?
The standardisation process will not use historical school-by-school data on Leaving Certificate performance in examinations.
Does how we perform in the written exams affect our accredited grades?
The performance of students in the 2021 examinations will not be used to calculate their accredited grades.
You've said there's two separate processes, but is there also a standardisation process for exams?
So, Emer, when exams are corrected, actually the teachers who correct them are provided with a detailed marking scheme, and they use those actually when they're correcting the examinations. And there's a similar process in place for project work as well. Now what this allows actually is examinations to be corrected to a national standard. Now even before the process begins, the examiners engage in detailed, intensive training, which shows them how to apply the marking scheme. And then at regular intervals, for example, at the very start, they correct a sample of the answers. These are then checked over by other examiners to ensure actually that the examiners are correcting to the national standard. And then at various points throughout the process, their work continues to be sampled to ensure that the national standard is maintained. Now, each year, these checks and balances are put in place in relation to the correction process. What the state examinations will have in place is an expert-led process. The examinations this year have had two sets of changes in relation to the assessment arrangements. One that happened actually at the start of the school year, and then in March there were extra changes to the examination papers. So what we will have is an expert-led approach involving the chief examiners and their advising team in looking at the examination papers themselves and the marking schemes, and ensuring actually that an appropriate standard is put in place for those. And we have to keep in mind, obviously, that it's not a full cohort that we have this year, it's actually a subset of the cohort. Now, in a normal year, obviously, what you would have is a situation where you have, as I said, a full cohort in place, and generally the marks are stable from a year-to-year basis, or the outcomes or the performance of students is stable on a year-to-year basis, except, obviously, if there was some unintentional or something that happened that actually might mean that there was a change in the marks of attainment that students might get.
Why are the results coming out so late?
September the 3rd is the earliest possible date for the results to come out because of the rigorous and robust quality assurance processes that are in place for both the examinations and the accredited grades to ensure that they're carried out to the highest quality and for the fairness and equity of the students involved.
You've said that CAO offers will be out in time for students studying in Ireland. But what about those studying abroad? What if their deadlines are before exam results day?
Candidates' results will be transferred at the earliest opportunity in order to facilitate progression to higher education. And as you know, the CAO has announced that it will issue its first round offers on the 7th of September. As with last year when we worked with the UK, the Netherlands, Poland and Hungary, the department worked with those countries in order to ensure that there were flexibilities put in place for students when results issued in September. The Department of Education and the Department of Further and Higher Education will work with these countries again in order to ensure that we can achieve those flexibilities as we did in 2020. Now, if a student has applied for a college abroad, it would really be important that they would engage with that college, inform them of the results date, and keep them up to date with all of the developments.
How can students be sure that their results will be accurate, given the errors that occurred last year?
Emer, it's important to state actually that a number of the key elements of the calculated grades process in 2020 have been incorporated into the accredited grades process in 2021. And these are that the professional judgment of the teacher in reaching the students' estimated marks is central to the model. We also have a process of school alignment, whereby each student's marks are part of that alignment among teachers of a particular subject in a school. There's oversight of the marks by the school principal before they're actually transmitted for standardisation. And we have a national standardisation process in place for students and for the grades and the accredited grades in 2021. Now, but we have learned lessons from last year, from 2020.
Okay.
The coding for the standardisation process has been completely rebuilt by Education Testing Services, a US-based company. It is a US-based, world-leading, non-profit organisation that specialises in educational measurement. There are also quality assurance processes in place for the standardisation process in 2021.
So we received a lot of questions, and that was a compilation of the top questions that we received from all of you. So now we have a few questions left, and it's time for the quick fire round.
Okay.
Do accredited grades include class tests?
Emer, I think it's fair to say that they do, because when teachers were working on the estimation of the marks, they would have been taking the students' learning over the 2 years into consideration, as well as other considerations that they would have done, for example, how the students might have achieved in the examinations had they sat them.
If I registered for higher level in my accredited grades and the exam, but then on the day I changed to sit the ordinary level paper, will this affect my accredited grade?
Well, the State Examinations Commission will use grade equivalences in order to determine which is the higher of the two on the date in which you get the results. These grade equivalences are well established actually since 2017. Now, in the case of where you've taken both the written examination and the accredited grade, and obviously you've taken one level in one and another in the other, both actually will be provided to the CAO in order to ensure that if, for example, there are a basic minimum requirement for a particular course, that information is available. Now, on the date actually when you get your provisional examination results, it will be the higher of the two that will actually be on the provisional set of results or the provisional statement when you get it. It is open to you at a later opportunity before actually the final statement of results is issued to determine which one of the two that you would like actually to be included within your Leaving Certificate results statement.
If I opted to sit an exam and receive the accredited grades in a particular subject, but on the day I didn't sit the exam, am I still guaranteed to receive my accredited grade?
Yes, you will get an accredited grade if you're eligible and you applied for the accredited grade. Now, in the case of students who are taking a subject outside school or out of school learners, you must have engaged actually with the out of school process in order to be able to get the accredited grade.
Is it possible to receive a failing accredited grade?
Well, as with the examinations, you can receive any grade across the range of grades, from a H8 to a H1 or from an O1 to an O8.
Is there an appeals process for accredited grades and the exams?
Yes. There is an appeals process actually both for the accredited grades and for the written examinations. In the case of a student who appeals an accredited grade, it's actually an appeal of process. It's actually the processing and the transmission of the estimated percentage marks by the school into the standardisation process. What's not involved actually is that it's not an appeal of the estimated mark provided by the school, nor is it an appeal of the standardisation process itself. In the case of a student actually who appeals the examinations, the SEC have processes in place for that. And that generally means, for example, that you can appeal the outcome of your examination, the written and the other components. And in that case, actually, you'll get an opportunity to view the written scripts if you choose to take an appeal. So for a student who has taken both the accredited grades and the examinations, they can actually appeal both. Or in the case of a student that has taken either or, then they can take the appeals process for either the examinations or the accredited grades.
Is there a fee for the appeals process?
No, there's no fee for the appeals process.
Thank you very much for attending today, Orla, and for answering all the questions that students have had. I hope this really helps students and answers any questions that they do have, and best of luck to all the students watching as well.
Thank you, Emer.